Today, I want to revisit the subject of CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress syndrome. I realize now more than ever, dealing with my clients and also realizing more about myself, that complex post-traumatic stress syndrome is more common than people may think it is. And there are a lot of misconceptions about it. People think that post-traumatic stress syndrome in general is most synonymous with military experience post-war. And that's a false misconception, or that is a misconception. That's a false theory. And complex post-traumatic stress syndrome, basically the whole idea behind complex post-traumatic stress syndrome is it's anyone, military or non-military, who has experienced either long-term trauma repeatedly or multiple experiences of trauma within a short period of time. So this often occurs in childhood if you've experienced childhood abuse or neglect, if you've been held captive, kidnapped, certainly if you've experienced trauma during war time, certainly our soldiers, particularly if they were held captive. My heart goes out to all of them. But also for anyone who's experienced domestic violence. And, you know, if you've experienced, so for example, I'll just tell you my personal experience. This past year, I had experienced trauma many years ago. 2009, I was waterboarded, and I had pretty much worked through that trauma. I had pretty much dealt with it and overcome it, and I was really proud of that. And then I got hit again, literally hit again, it's not funny, with another bout of domestic violence this past summer in June, and it triggered everything all over again in my body. And so I think it's important to talk about these things because the symptoms come out as physical symptoms and we don't even realize what's happening. And so what happened to me last June was it brought up a lot of my past trauma as well. And then on top of the physical violence that happened to me last June, I then moved out of one dwelling. I had to give up my dream home in Florida because of this. I didn't want to live near my abuser. So then I had to quickly pivot and figure out where I was going to live because my lease was up on place that I was currently living, because I was under contract on another place. And so I had to quickly pivot and make really fast decisions on what I was going to do with my life. So that was the second form of trauma. And these things compound, and moves are they're very traumatic. We don't think of them as trauma, but you get rid of a lot of things, and moving it's a very traumatic experience. And even though it can be exciting and you can look at it as a good way, once you get settled down and your nervous system starts to regulate again, you start to process what's really happened, and you start to realize wow, I've been through a lot. And so when you get honest with yourself and your nervous system starts to settle down, you realize, whew, okay. Subconsciously, you didn't realize you were that dysregulated in the moment because your body was still on hypervigilance state. Your body was still hyper-regulated. So that's what happened to me. And now I'm realizing that previously I had experienced PTSD. Now I'm in a state of CPTSD. And so those symptoms for me are, they can be very severe. And so I wanted to talk to you about that today because I know I've talked in the past, but I haven't talked specifically about what's been going on with me, and I think it might help some of you who might be experiencing it. I know I've talked to clients and they've felt like something might be really wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you other than your body is trying to process what's going on, and it's a protective mechanism in the body trying to save your energy and save your strength. So for example, you might feel severe fatigue. You might feel tired all the time. You might not be able to concentrate. You might not remember things. You might have brain fog. You might forget where you put things all the time. You might not be able to recall memory, short-term or long-term. I recently have had 2 bouts of severe nausea and literally couldn't even hold water or ice down. That's that reactivity in the body, and I do not like to be physically ill. It bothers some of us more than others. For me, that's one of my worst. I just can't stand to be physically ill. And that was scary for me. So you might become very physically ill. Let it work its way out. It's the body's way of physically purging you from what's mentally happening. After about 10 hours, I was able to drink a ginger ale, and that finally settled me down, and then I was able to drink water. But sometimes we just have to let these things work its course, and then you're able to observe what it was that triggered you and what it was that upset you. And so for me, it was the compounding of a lot of things that I was unaware of, and it was actually good that the physical symptoms brought it on, because otherwise I would not have had the awareness of what was happening. So for example, some things were going on with my job, and it wasn't until I got on my computer and started having the shakiness and the physical symptoms that brought on the illness that I had that awareness. So just be aware, be gentle with yourself if these symptoms come on, especially if they come on suddenly and severely. And talk about it with someone that you trust. If you don't have a trusted friend or family member that you can talk about it with, consider some coaching, because it is really important to work through it and to just really, really be gentle with yourself in these trying times, because complex post-traumatic stress syndrome is a very serious disorder that we have to process and work through. And the best way to do that is to go within and to be honest with ourselves about what's going on, and to try to unlock those subconscious blocks going on in the mind. So, you know, I'm happy to do an assessment with you if you want to call me. I can't diagnose because I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can do an assessment for CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress syndrome, and it may help you understand if you think you have some of these symptoms. So it's often confused with other mental health illnesses because there's not much known about it. So I feel like unless mental health providers have experienced it, it's hard to understand it because it is so complex. And I can say that it is different than just post-traumatic stress syndrome. It is a lot more complex. It is so difficult, and some days are harder than others. And you know, some days I feel great and I feel like there's nothing wrong with me, and other days I cry and I don't understand why. And it doesn't mean that I can't function, and I think it makes me more empathetic for my clients, and I think it makes me really good at what I do, quite frankly. But yeah, life can be really hard, and I'm still, I don't know if grateful is the right word, but I do believe everything happens for a reason. And, you know, I was dealt a hard hand of cards in life, and that's okay. Because if I can help one person, then I feel like I've done my job. And I just want everyone out there struggling to know you're not alone. And in case no one else has told you today, you are truly amazing. And if you're struggling because someone else abused you, whether in childhood or as an adult, it is not your fault. You did not deserve this, and you are worthy of love. You are worthy of all that you desire. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed. If you haven't yet, just hit that button and join. Thank you.